If you haven't already heard, we are in the midst of a massive health crisis, particularly here in the United States, where chronic disease has and continues to permeate and basically take over our bodies. Now, I'm not talking about like Patrick Swayze's spirit overtaking Whoopi Goldberg's physical body in an effort to reconnect with Demi Moore in Ghost. Shout out to 1990. Because chronic disease doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't just show up. In fact, by the time it's diagnosed and symptoms appear, the damage has probably been brewing in our bodies for years, maybe even decades. So you may be thinking, Natalie, what is chronic disease? Like, what are you even talking about? And more importantly, is this something I can avoid? Which I will answer in just a minute. But first, here is a short list of some of the most common and most familiar chronic diseases that our society faces. And I believe some of these will surprise you. Hypertension or high blood pressure, cancer, obesity, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's dementia, asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, myasthenia gravis, and eczema. Y'all, this is a huge problem that I've seen adversely impacting my patients for years, and it's finally starting to get the recognition I believe it deserves. Probably because in the US we spend $4.3 trillion on healthcare, and about 75% of that is on chronic disease. And I'm not talking about prevention, although we should be, because most of these conditions are not only preventable, but also reversible. And we'll get to the how-tos in just a moment. We've all had loved ones affected by these chronic conditions, and maybe even you yourself have been impacted. After all, 60% of American adults have at least one chronic condition, and 40% of us have two or more. Did you know that prior to 1960, there were not even any drugs for chronic diseases? This is because they were that rare. Why is it such an epidemic that it is now? Well, name something, and you're probably correct. I mean, we've had the onset of fast food. I think that was in the 1960s, the first McDonald's. We have been bombarded with ultra-processed foods. High fructose corn syrup was developed in a lab in my home state of Oklahoma in the 1970s. We are way more sedentary than we used to be. And also we have around 80,000 or more environmental toxins that are insidious in our modern lives. And on average, in the United States, we are diagnosed with our first chronic disease in our 40s. So let me tell you about Robert. Robert was my neighbor early in my career. I had bought a little house next to he and his wife, Linda, and they liked to look out for me. I think they realized pretty quickly that I was clueless with all things domestic. So gardening, home repair, you name it. And looking back, I probably had no business buying that house. But Robert was a tall, slender man at the time in his mid to early 50s. And he walked about 6 miles a day as a mail carrier. But Robert also was a smoker and likely had some underlying respiratory disease. And he also had high blood pressure, because who doesn't, right? So Robert became ill and hospitalized with pneumonia. Pretty common, right? Not when your body is also trying to fight many other disease processes. So he spent several days in the ICU, and Linda told me he was coming home soon. And a couple days later, she delivered the devastating news that Robert had taken a turn for the worse. His body had filled with fluid that he was not able to overcome, and he did not survive. This is the detriment of living with chronic disease. No organ systems can function optimally when there are competing factors at play. And what I can tell you through the lens of a physical therapist for over 22 years is that I've seen these detrimental impacts over and over again. And I always think back to Robert and how his early death could have been prevented. Putting a spotlight on this widespread issue so that we can intervene earlier and prevent so many unnecessarily health complications is a huge part of my mission. The majority of my patients are like 65 to 100, and most of them have a laundry list of chronic diseases, also a laundry list of medications. So when I review a patient's chart, most have these very lengthy past medical histories, often with all the familiar culprits: hypertension, type 2 diabetes, obesity, history of cancer, fatty liver disease, respiratory disease, arthritis, and more common now, dementia. It's rare for me to see somebody with minimal diagnoses and minimal medications. And so often these people's lives begin to revolve around doctor's appointments, tests, medication adjustments. Y'all, I don't know about you, but this is not how I envision my golden years. Not only am I a terrible sick person, but it's also quite a burden to family and friends. Many of you have lived this. These disease states, even what seems as benign as high blood pressure, which is not benign, it's just crazy common, and we take a deep dive into blood pressure in another episode. These disease states, these conditions usually determine how quickly or not someone recovers from any plethora of ailments. That could be surgery, even elective surgeries, illness, trauma. So think about this. If you or a loved one is trying to heal from a surgery or sickness, and your body is also in a constant fight against these other things, it is a definite barrier to healing and will inevitably prolong the recovery process. So you may be saying, but Natalie, like I have poor genetics, or my mom had type 2 diabetes, my grandfather had hypertension and had a stroke. And while I do not want to dismiss that, what I do want to say is that genetics explains about 15% of the variance of risk for chronic disease. The other 85% is environmental, which gives us hope, right? Because this means that there are many things in our control to mitigate or decrease that risk. And thankfully, we have massive agency over our own health. But we do have to be intentional and take action. And that's what we're going to talk about. So guess what? There is no magic pill. But making these 3 pillars a priority in your life, if they're not already, will reap incredible benefits. And we are talking about exercise, nutrition, and sleep. But I do want to leave you with some simple things that you can implement into your daily life, and that done over time becomes a habit. And that's the goal, is sustainable lifestyle choices. So in the exercise bucket, each of you is in a very different place with exercise, and this can be a huge spectrum. So I want to meet you where you are. We should be getting 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise per week. But that's going to look different for each person. And it's also maybe we don't want to go from 0 minutes of exercise right now to 150. So we want to be smart. We want to seek guidance from our physicians, our providers, trainers, health coaches, if this is new to you. 150 minutes sounds like a lot, but you guys, to break it up in a very digestible way, that's 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And also you can break it up a little bit more how you want. However, we don't want to just like front load and do, 2 hours on a Sunday and call it good for the week, right? We do want it dispersed out, and research has shown that you want to be doing things every day in some form or fashion. So definitely keep that in mind on your journey. But kudos to you for taking action no matter where you are. And if that is just beginning to walk, awesome. Because we have to start somewhere, and we have to start implementing exercise into our daily routines. Also, I'm a huge proponent of strength training. Now, this is in addition to your 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise per week. So the suggested is 2 to 3 days a week of resistance training. Again, if you have really never spent much time lifting weights, or if it's been a while, please seek the advice and guidance of an expert. We go into more detail on strength training in our episode on metabolic health, but just know in this exercise bucket, we're talking about the recommended 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise per week and 2 to 3 days of strength training. Now, this leads us to our next pillar, which is nutrition. And I think we can all agree that nutrition can be overwhelming. There's also a lot of conflicting information. I'm very aware of this that's out there. Today, I just want to zoom in to leave you with something that is going to be beneficial, that hopefully you will see benefits very quickly if you adhere to these things. Number one, significantly reducing your liquid sugar intake. Please notice, I did not say eliminate, because I think when we do drastic things, they're not sustainable. So significantly reducing your liquid sugar intake. And I'm talking about sodas, that includes diet sodas, our fancy coffees, or even if we're drinking black coffee and loading it with sugar and creamer, juices, and not a popular take, I get it, but also alcohol. If you can significantly limit and reduce your liquid sugar, you're going to see benefits very, very quickly, I promise. Number two that I want to leave you with, cutting off all food intake, that includes liquid sugar, 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. I know life is busy for everybody, right? And this may not be something you can do every single night. I mean, y'all, I have 3 teenagers, okay? I get it. We are busy. There are nights that are late and we haven't eaten at all, and we're home at 9, like scarfing food down, okay? This is life. But if you could designate, say, 3 to 5 days a week where you cut off your eating, what I try to do is eat around 6:30 on a good night and cut off everything by 7 with the hope of getting in bed by 10. All right. So just keep that in mind. That doesn't mean you can't have water after that, or my personal favorite is hot tea. So I'll drink hot tea from dinner until bedtime if I'm home. That's going to reap wonderful benefits. You're going to wake up feeling so much better. And that's going to lead us to our third pillar, which is sleep. You guys, nobody's getting enough sleep. I don't even know what the statistics are anymore. It's insane. Most of us are not getting enough sleep as far as quantity, and we're certainly not getting the quality. This may sound strange, but what we're gonna do, this is an easy, free thing we can do every single morning, is you're going to get morning sunlight first thing. Maybe you take your cup of coffee outside. Maybe you just go and pray or meditate first thing in the morning. Thank you for this day. And I'm not talking about going and sitting by your window or lurking by the window where there's some sun coming in. I'm talking about going out, getting the magical photons from our magnificent sun, because this sets our circadian rhythms for the day. So once we set our circadian rhythm for the day by getting morning sunlight, we go about our day, and that's going to lead us into the bookend of the day, which is at night. So children have bedtime routines, right? And sometimes very regimented. Ours did. I mean, it was bath, lavender, story time, soothing to sleep time. But as adults, we are terrible at this. So we kind of need to implement our own, we'll call it sleep hygiene. And this in large part should entail winding down and getting off of our devices before bed. Ideally, an hour or more before bed. So that's really hard. I get it. It is really hard because we are addicted to our iPhones, iPads, TV, all the things. But we're going to start to turn those devices off. And then once we're in bed, we want to eliminate all light in the room. If that means investing in some blackout curtains because you're getting some natural light coming in the morning, or like a lamp outside that could bother you during the night, by all means do that. Also, covering up or moving around any little lights from little boxes, or I know the smoke detector light can bug people. So we want to eliminate all the light, and we want the room cool. Now this can really be contentious amongst partners, because a lot of times people aren't exactly equal in what temperature they like to sleep at. But all research has shown that a cooler room leads to better quality sleep. So keep the temperature cool. And let's be honest, if we sleep better, we are just better humans. And then everyone is happy. Thank you for joining me. And if you found Healthful Connections in this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend or loved one.